Now we can carry on the discussion now and speak with Jonathan Conricus, a former Israeli military spokesperson and now a senior fellow at the Foundation for Defense of Democracies, a Washington-based think tank. He joins us from Tel Aviv. Firstly, families of the hostages have said that what is needed is a deal to end the war. Is a full occupation of Gaza a good idea, do you think? We've seen a protest by those families taking place right now.
Yes, hello, good evening. Thanks for having me on. I definitely understand the fear, the frustration, the anger, and all of the tremendously difficult feelings that the families of the hostages have. And I would agree with them from their personal point of view. At the national level, however, things are a bit different. And what Israel still has not achieved, even though it has waited for a long time, negotiated a lot, been extremely flexible, trying to meet Hamas's demands. But so far, Israel has failed to actually defeat Hamas or get the hostages back. And Israel hasn't achieved what it needs to do in order to safeguard the future of the state of Israel from the scourge that is Hamas. And that's what we're talking about. It's not an occupation for the sake of an occupation. It is a military move in order to take out Hamas, the remaining pockets where Hamas is in control. And yes, it has downsides. We speak about the hostages, and yes, it has a lot of humanitarian issues connected to it. But at the end of the day, if Israel wants to safeguard the future of Israelis in the south, it needs to defeat Hamas. And defeating Hamas means going in and taking Hamas out where they are. I can see no other way for there to be stability and long-term peace, not a truce that will be broken again by Hamas when they see fit. And that is, I think, what Israel is thinking about.
Well, in the last hour, we've seen a statement from Hamas saying that Netanyahu is willing to sacrifice hostages with takeover plans. So what do you think of that?
Well, I think that Hamas are a bunch of murdering cowards who are using the most despicable type of psychological warfare, disseminating videos of starving Israeli hostages, digging their own graves in order to apply pressure on the families and through the families on Israeli decision makers.
But Jonathan, the question is more directed to about Netanyahu willing to sacrifice hostages. Do you think that's correct?
I think that what the obligation of the Israeli government is to think about the future of the state of Israel in its entirety and to defeat an enemy that is a mortal threat to the state of Israel while doing everything feasible in order to get our people home, our brothers and sisters home from Hamas captivity. It's an almost impossible situation to be in. There's no win here. It's various degrees of unsuccess or not success, and I don't think that anybody could find a fine solution for it. But at the end of the day, Israel isn't safe as long as Hamas exists, and that is what Israel needs to do.
And what about the Palestinians in Gaza then? What will happen to them? The UN says it will be catastrophic and illegal under international law for Israel to fully militarily occupy the Strip.
Yes, well, with all due respect, allow me to not to be very moved by any statement by the UN when it comes to Israel. I think that organization has been exposed as tremendously biased and failing in its mandate when it comes to upholding its charter, when it comes to dealing with a democracy defending itself against a terrorist organization.
But do you agree with the words that they're using? They're saying that it would be catastrophic for the Palestinian people, though.
No, it doesn't have to be. I mean, the situation on the ground in Gaza is difficult, clearly, but it doesn't have to be catastrophic because the IDF will warn if this move is sanctioned by the cabinet and if it goes ahead, then I'm sure that the IDF will do two important things. One is that the IDF will warn ahead of time and tell Palestinians to move out of combat zones so that they are not in harm's way. And two is that there will be a enhanced humanitarian supply plan for Palestinians in the southern part of the Gaza Strip, where Israel will be providing everything that they need. And I think this time around there will be less ambiguity, because if Israel goes in and really takes control over all of the Gaza Strip, then there's no ambiguity about who will be responsible. Israel will be responsible to do that, and as such, I think the humanitarian response, I hope, will be better from an Israeli perspective. I already know that the Gaza Humanitarian Foundation is going to ramp up operations from 4 to 16 operating sites. And I think that if Israel goes ahead and launches this offensive, there will be a strong humanitarian plan in place. It doesn't have to be a catastrophe. It can be a catastrophe if the UN organizations continue to boycott Israel and if Palestinians are prevented by Hamas to evacuate from combat areas, then that could spell very bad news. And I hope that they won't be. I hope that they'll be allowed to move from a combat site and that they won't be able to be used by Hamas as human shields.
Yeah, Jonathan, IDF did tell civilians earlier to evacuate parts of Gaza City's Old Town, so following the procedures as you laid out for us. But we did also hear from our previous guest, Shayna Lowe, talking to us about the difficulties that, such large numbers, we're talking in the millions of people here that have to be moved and relocated whenever these activities happen. And as we've seen on our screens in front of our eyes, the death and the destruction that this entails from people moving, not just from the fighting and the blast, but also just from the lack of aid and food that's coming into Gaza.
Yeah, I thought it was interesting what she said, the previous so-called humanitarian or the spokesperson. There was one word that was blatantly missing in my ears. She didn't mention Hamas even once. It was all about Israel and Israel and Israel, as if Israel started this war, as if Israel wanted this war, and as if Israel hasn't tried to stop this war many times over with ceasefires that Hamas has refuted. The responsibility for what happens in Gaza is on the shoulders of the mass murderers that are referred to as the Hamas terrorist organization. They started the war. They could have ended it by handing over the hostages. They could have ended it by having a ceasefire that everybody was pressuring Israel to do. But they felt so strong and so powerful with European countries applying pressure on Israel that they refused to negotiate, and they stopped negotiations, rejected them.
Yeah,
and
Jonathan, we are waiting to hear what the Security Council does decide to do officially in the next hour ahead. Jonathan Conricus, we do thank you for speaking to us, former Israeli military spokesperson there, and now senior fellow at the Foundation for Defense Democracies, a Washington-based think tank.